So, last week, or a few weeks ago, depending on when this video is released, I entered the Brackeys Game Jam 2021.2. Unlike the last two Game Jams, this one was going to go well. And so at 11 AM on Sunday, when I got that Discord ping, with the theme, I was set off to work. And the theme was, Bring on the Chaos! Now I don't have any immediate ideas on what would be a good game, but since this is a game jam, the most important thing is going to be to make something fun. And what I find to be an easy win for fun is a good top-down shooter. So I got to work on a prototype. I wanted to make a pixel art game, and so was using the Pixel Perfect camera's render texture upscaling method to make sure it was always going to be pixel perfect. I also wanted the game to feature brutalist style architecture and strong lighting and shadows similar to the game Control. So I used the Universal Render Pipeline's 2D shadow system for that. So some pixel art and one basic character controller later, I had a pretty good start and went to bed. Sometime that evening, I decided the most chaotic thing about this game was going to be the host of particle effects, such as blood splatters, bullet trails, explosions, and whatever else I could attach them to. So it was important that I had to get familiar with the Unity particle system as soon as possible. I sat down for a couple of hours and proceeded to learn at least some of the basics and began to make some particles. It didn't really matter how they looked that much at all, since all these particles would be pixelated when the game was rendering. I started with this explosion effect, and then these bullet trails, and finally some different blood splatter effects for different enemies. The next day or so was spent implementing more of the basic systems such as player and enemy health, as well as the enemy AI and spawning. I also went over the colour scheme of the tile map and enemies to stand out a bit more. Now, it was around day 4 or so that I realised something. As chaotic as my game was, it didn't feel fun yet, and also was going to be very similar to the inevitable hundreds of other people who would have the same idea as to make a top-down shooter. I needed something new, something satisfying. I was also playing through Ori and the Will of the Wisps at the time, great game by the way, and figured why not borrow an idea from that, specifically the bash mechanic. So I spent the evening writing some spaghetti code that, when shift is pressed and the player is near a bashable object, the script would freeze time, let the player pick a direction and is dashed in that direction when shift was released. Here is the code for that, in case anyone was interested. This, coupled with some screen shake and particle effects, led to a very satisfying move and added a new dynamic, allowing the player to quickly escape sticky situations. Now, I had just one dilemma. What exactly should be the bashable objects? I had 3 options: the enemies, the projectiles, like bullets or grenades, or both of those. After a few hours of playtesting and watching family members try out all the different options, I decided to go with just projectiles, since enemies were often clunky and it felt too difficult to bash off of them, since they were so large. Projectiles also had the added advantage of that you could send them flying in the opposite direction, meaning you can fire it to another enemy, dealing some extra damage along the way. The majority of the game was in place by this point, which was a good thing, as time was rapidly running out, and I was off to London on the day that the Game Jam finished. So, on the last 2 days I experimented with some extra mechanics related to ammo reloading, health pickups, grenade recharging and gunfire rates, as well as implemented any extra sound effects, screen shake and particle effects to make the game as fun as possible. And that's it folks, my entry for the 2021.2 Game Jam. I think that I have made something good looking and fun to play, as well as with at least some aspects of originality. I would love to hear your feedback in the comments, so go and play the game, the link is in the description. While you're down there, you may as well subscribe, it would really mean a lot to me.